She stood in front of the panel with her chin up and her heart pounding, while the whole room stared at her feet. Her shoes were torn. The right one had split clean across the front, and her wet sock peeked through like a small confession she could not hide. And then the laughter started. The big man at the center of the table laughed first. Then the young one beside him laughed. Then the proud woman in the red blazer laughed loudest of all. They laughed at her shoes. They laughed at her shame. They did not know that one day, every single one of them would sit in that same chair, sweating, while she decided their future. How does a girl with torn shoes end up holding the power over the people who mocked her? What happened in the 8 years between that day and the day she walked back through those same glass doors? And when she finally faced them again, did she crush them the way they crushed her, or did she do something nobody in that room ever expected? Sit tight, my people, and let me tell you this powerful story. Watch it to the very end, because the ending will stay with you for a long time. And before we begin, do me a small favor. Tap that like button, subscribe to this channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story like this. And in the comments section, tell me where you are watching from and what time it is right now. Tell me your city, your country, your time. Let me see how far this story will travel. Now, let me take you back to the very beginning. Her name was Ngozi Okeke. She was born in Mushin, in the heart of Lagos, in a small face-me-I-face-you house where 11 families shared one toilet and one tap that only worked when it wanted to. Ngozi was poor. Very poor. The kind of poor where you learn to fold your hunger neatly and carry it quietly so nobody sees it on your face. Her father had been a security guard at a paint factory. A tall, gentle man who worked long nights and came home smelling of metal and dust. He used to sit Ngozi on his knee and tell her, "My daughter, this world will judge you by what you wear, but God will judge you by what you carry inside. Carry something good inside, and one day it will speak for you." Ngozi never forgot those words. She held them like treasure. But when Ngozi was 14, her father did not come home from work one morning. There had been an armed robbery at the factory gate. He died protecting a building that was not even his. Just like that, the gentle man who smelled of metal and dust was gone. And the weight of the world fell on 2 pairs of shoulders. Ngozi's, and her mother's. Her mother, Mama Ngozi, sold akara by the roadside. Every single morning, before the sun even thought about waking, she was already there, frying bean cakes in hot oil, her face glowing from the flames, her wrapper tied tight, her voice calling out to the Danfo passengers rushing to work. "Akara! Hot akara! Come and buy!" That oil fed Ngozi. That oil paid for her uniform. That oil carried her, cake by cake, all the way through school. And Ngozi was brilliant. My people, this girl was brilliant. While other children played in the gutter water after rain, Ngozi sat under the only working bulb on the street and read her books until her eyes burned. Numbers loved her. She could look at figures the way some people look at music, hearing patterns nobody else could hear. Her teachers said it. Her neighbors said it. This Ngozi, she will carry this family out of Mushin one day. They said it so often that even Ngozi began to believe it. And she earned it. She won a scholarship to study accounting at the University of Lagos. The whole street came out to celebrate. Mama Ngozi cried so hard that day she could not even fry akara. And 4 years later, Ngozi graduated. First class. The best in her entire department. The girl from Mushin, the daughter of an akara seller, stood on that stage in a borrowed gown and collected an award that made grown professors stand and clap. But here is the thing about being poor, my people. A first-class degree does not buy you new shoes. It does not buy you a fine wardrobe. It does not erase Mushin from your accent or the patch on your trousers. Ngozi had the brain of a queen, but she still walked the streets in the only good pair of shoes she owned. Black, simple, second-hand shoes she had bought from a roadside seller in Yaba 2 years before. They were worn. The soles were thin. But she polished them every night until they shined, because her father had taught her that being poor was no excuse to be dirty. And then came the day that would change everything. A big company, my people. The biggest. Brightstone Holdings. An investment firm with shining glass towers in Victoria Island, The kind of building where the air conditioning alone cost more than Ngozi's whole street earned in a year. Brightstone was looking for a junior financial analyst. Thousands applied. Thousands. And out of all of them, Ngozi was shortlisted. Her name, Ngozi Okeke from Mushin, on the list with the children of senators and bank chairmen. She read the email 5 times. Then she ran to the Acura stand and showed her mother, and the two of them held each other and cried right there in the smoke and the oil. The interview was set for a Monday morning. Ngozi prepared like a soldier going to war. She read everything about Brightstone. She practiced her answers in the mirror until midnight. She ironed her one good blouse and her one good skirt with a borrowed iron heated over coals. And she polished those shoes, those tired black shoes, until you could almost see your face in them. But my people, listen. The night before the interview, the sky over Lagos opened up. It rained. And in Lagos, when it rains, it does not just rain. It floods. The streets become rivers. The gutters overflow. And the next morning, when Ngozi stepped out of her house at 5 a.m. to begin the long journey to Victoria Island, the whole of Mushin was underwater. She had no money for a taxi. So she did what poor people in Lagos do. She walked. She rolled up her trousers and she waded through the brown floodwater, holding her shoes high above her head to keep them dry, holding her certificates in a nylon bag pressed against her chest. She walked through water up to her knees. She climbed onto one danfo, then another, then a kiki, squeezing her coins out one by one, watching the time, praying she would not be late. And she made it. By the grace of God, she made it to Victoria Island with 30 minutes to spare. She found a quiet corner outside that shining building. She wiped her feet with a cloth she had brought. She slipped her precious shoes back on. And then her heart sank. The floodwater had done its work. The thin, tired sole of her right shoe, already weak from years of walking, had soaked through and split. When she put her foot down, the front of the shoe yawned open like a mouth, and her wet sock showed through. Torn. Her one good pair of shoes was torn. Ngozi stood there for a moment, fighting tears. She could go home. She could give up. But then she heard her father's voice. The world will judge you by what you wear, but God will judge you by what you carry inside. She straightened her back. She lifted her chin. And she walked into Brightstone Holdings with torn shoes and a first-class brain, and she decided that her brain would speak louder than her feet. But the world, my people, does not always let the brain speak first. The interview panel was 3 people. At the center sat Mr. Tun Becker, a heavy-set man in an expensive suit, the head of the analyst department, a man who wore his importance like cologne. Beside him sat a young man, his nephew, Femi, a boy who had never struggled a day in his life and whose only qualification was the surname he was born with. And on the other side sat a woman in a sharp red blazer. Mrs. Bizi Adeyemi, head of human resources. A woman with cold, beautiful eyes that scanned you and priced you in seconds. Ngozi walked in. She greeted them politely. "Good morning, sir." "Good morning, ma." And as she moved to sit, she saw it. She saw all 3 of them look down. At her feet. At the torn shoe. At the wet sock. There was a silence. A heavy, cruel silence. And then Femi, the young one, snorted. He covered his mouth, but it was too late. The laugh escaped. Mr. Becker looked at the shoe, then looked at Mrs. Bizi, and a smile spread across his face. And Mrs. Bizi, in her red blazer, leaned back, crossed her arms, and let out a long, loud laugh that filled the whole boardroom. "On," Mrs. Bizi said, wiping the corner of her eye. "Is it raining shoes outside? Or did you swim here?" Femi laughed harder. He actually pulled out his phone. And my people, this boy, this useless boy, he took a picture. He took a picture of Ngozi's torn shoes while she stood there, and he showed it to his uncle, and the 2 of them shook with laughter. "Brightstone Holdings," Mr. Becker said, shaking his head slowly. "Young lady, this is one of the most prestigious firms in Nigeria. Our clients are billionaires. Do you think we can send you to a client looking like this? Do you think this is how we represent the Brightstone name?" Ngozi's face was burning, but her voice was steady. "Sir," she said quietly, My shoes tore on the way here because of the flood. But I am not here to be looked at. I am here to be tested. Test me. Ask me anything about finance, about analysis, about the numbers. That is what I came here to show you. For one moment, my people, just one moment, the room went quiet again. Because there was something in her voice. Something solid. Something the money in that room could not buy. But Mrs. Beasy only smirked. We've seen enough, she said, waving her hand. We can already tell the kind of background you come from. This is a high-class environment, my dear. You wouldn't fit. Next candidate. And that was it. They did not ask her one single question about finance. Not one. They judged her by the shoe and threw her away. Ngozi stood up, gathered her nylon bag of certificates, and walked toward the door with her head still high. But just before she reached it, a fourth voice spoke. A man who had been sitting quietly in the corner, observing. An older man with gray at his temples and kind, tired eyes. Mr. Emeka. A senior partner who had only come to watch the process that day. Wait, Mr. Emeka said. He turned to the panel. We didn't ask the young woman a single question. Her CV is the strongest in the entire pile. First class. Best graduating student. Surely we can at least. Emeka, please. Mr. Beggar cut him off, irritated. Image is everything in this business. Let it go. Mr. Emeka looked at Ngozi. And Ngozi looked back at him. And he gave her a small, sad nod. The nod of a man who knows an injustice is happening and does not have the power to stop it. Ngozi nodded back. Then she walked out of Brightstone Holdings, down the shining glass corridor, out into the Lego sun, and she did not cry. Not yet. She saved her tears for the Danfo home, where nobody knew her name. Now, my people, this is where most people's stories end. Rejected. Humiliated. Broken. But not Ngozi. Oh, not Ngozi. Because what they didn't know that day was that they had not destroyed her. They had lit a fire inside her. A quiet fire. The most dangerous kind. That night, she sat with her mother in the candlelight, and she told her everything. And Mama Ngozi, the Akara seller, wiped her daughter's face and said, My child, listen to me. A diamond does not become coal because a fool refuses to see it shine. They could not see you today. But you will keep shining until they have no choice but to look. And those words, my people, became Ngozi's Bible. 2 weeks later, Ngozi got another interview. Not at a glass tower. At a small, cramped office above a supermarket in Ikeja. A tiny startup. Just 6 people and a dream. A young fintech company called Kobo, founded by a brilliant young man named Chidi who had quit his bank job to build something new. Chidi did not care about Ngozi's shoes. He looked at her CV, asked her to solve a complex financial model on the spot, watched her do it in 15 minutes, and said, When can you start? Ngozi started the next morning. And my people, she worked. Lord, how she worked. She came first and left last. She poured every ounce of that brilliant brain into that little company. When Kobo could not afford to pay her full salary in the early months, she stayed anyway, because she believed. She built their financial systems from the ground up. She caught errors that would have sunk them. She designed strategies that brought in investors. When everyone else panicked, Ngozi stayed calm, looked at the numbers, and found the way forward. 1 year became 2. 2 became 4. And Kobo grew. It grew the way a small fire grows in dry season. First it was 6 people. Then 60. Then 600. The little startup above the supermarket became one of the fastest-growing financial technology firms in all of West Africa. And Ngozi, the girl with the torn shoes, rose with it. From analyst to manager. From manager to head of finance. And finally, Chidi made her what she had earned the right to become. Chief Financial Officer. Partner. Co-owner of the company. Ngozi moved her mother out of Mushin. She built her a beautiful house in Magodo with a real kitchen and a real toilet that flushed every time. She told her mother to retire from the Akara stand. But Mama Ngozi only laughed and said, I will fry Akara until the day God calls me, because that oil built a queen. And so Ngozi let her be. 8 years passed, my people. 8 years. And while Ngozi was rising, something else was falling. Brightstone Holdings. The shining glass tower. Under the proud, lazy leadership of men like Mr. Beggar, who promoted his relatives instead of talent and judged shoes instead of skill, Brightstone began to rot from the inside. They lost their best people. They made foolish investments. They mocked the small companies they thought were beneath them. And one of those small companies they ignored, the one nobody at Brightstone thought was worth a second look, was a little fintech firm called Kobo. Until the day Kobo became big enough to buy them. Yes, my people. You heard me. The fire became a flood. Brightstone Holdings, drowning in debt, desperate, on the edge of collapse, was acquired. Bought. Swallowed whole. And the company that bought them, the company that now owned every desk, every glass window, every chair in that shining tower was Kobo. And the person Kobo sent to take charge of the takeover, to review every single employee, to decide who would keep their job and who would go, was the new chief financial officer. Ngozi Okeke. The girl with the torn shoes was coming back. And this time, she was coming back to interview them. The morning Ngozi walked through those glass doors again, she did not wade through any flood. A driver opened the door of a clean black car, and she stepped out in a crisp navy suit and shoes. My people, beautiful shoes, the finest shoes, though her heart was thinking of a different pair entirely. She walked down that shining corridor, the same corridor she had once walked out of in shame, and now everyone bowed. Good morning, Ma. Welcome, Ma. They did not know who she was. They only knew she now held their lives in her hands. She walked into the big boardroom. And she sat down at the center of the table. And one by one, the staff of Brightstone Holdings were called in to be interviewed for their own jobs. The first to enter was a heavy-set man, older now, grayer, his expensive suit hanging looser than it used to. Mr. Tund Beggar. He came in nervous, clutching a folder, sweating despite the air conditioning. He did not recognize her. How could he? In his memory, she was a torn shoe, not a face. He sat down across from her and gave a shaky smile. Good morning, Ma, he said. I am Tund Beggar, head of the analyst department. I've given 15 years of loyal service to Brightstone, and I'm confident I can add value to the new. Mr. Beggar, Ngozi said gently, folding her hands. Do you remember an interview you held about 8 years ago? A young woman. Fresh graduate. First class. She came in on a rainy Monday. Mr. Beggar blinked. Ma, I've held hundreds of interviews. I'm afraid Her shoes were torn, Ngozi said quietly. The flood had split them open on her way here. And instead of testing her brilliant mind, you and your colleagues laughed at her feet. Your nephew took a photograph. The woman in the red blazer told her she did not fit. And you sent her away without asking a single question about finance. The blood drained from Mr. Beggar's face. Slowly. Terribly. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked at her face now. Really looked. And in his eyes, the memory rose like a ghost from the grave. That young woman, Ngozi said, and she stood up, was me. The folder slipped from his hands and fell to the floor. He did not pick it up. My people, the room was so silent you could hear the air conditioning breathe. Now, here is where you expect the revenge. You expect Ngozi to scream, to throw him out, to make him crawl, to take that old photograph and shove it in his face. That is what they did to her, after all. That is what they deserved. But Ngozi Okeke was not built from their clay. She had carried something good inside, just as her father told her, and that good thing had grown into something far more powerful than revenge. She looked at the trembling man and said, I am not here to do to you what you did to me, Mr. Beggar. I learned a long time ago that bitterness is a poison you drink while waiting for someone else to die. But I am here to make decisions, and my decisions will be honest. She paused. You judged people by their shoes for 15 years. You promoted your relatives over better people. The state of this company is the harvest of those seeds. I cannot keep you in a leadership role. But I will not throw you into the street the way you threw me. You will be offered a fair severance, with dignity. Use it wisely. Treat the next struggling young person you meet with the respect you refuse to show me. That is the only revenge I want." Mr. Beggar lowered his head, and to everyone's shock, the proud man wept. Next came his nephew, Femi. Older now but still soft, still entitled, still empty. He strolled in carelessly, with no qualifications beyond his name. He did not even pretend to take it seriously. Ngozi reviewed his work record, saw 8 years of doing nothing while being paid for everything, and she let him go that same afternoon. Some seeds, my people, simply must be uprooted. Then came the woman in the red blazer. Mrs. Bizi Adeyemi. Older, her cold beauty faded, her hands shaking. She recognized Ngozi the moment she sat down, because guilt has a long memory. She did not even wait to be questioned. She broke down. "I remember you," she whispered. "I remember what I said. I have thought about that day so many times over the years and felt ashamed. I'm so sorry. I was cruel. I was so cruel." And Ngozi, my people, looked at this woman who had laughed loudest of all, and she saw something she did not expect. She saw real regret. She saw a person who had actually changed. And so Ngozi made a different choice. "You hurt me deeply, Mrs. Adeyemi," she said. "But you are the only one in this room with the courage to admit it without being forced. That courage is worth something. I will give you one chance. Not in HR, judging people, but in our community programs, helping young graduates from poor backgrounds find their footing. The very people you once turned away. Take it, and become the opposite of what you were that day." Mrs. Bizi grabbed Ngozi's hand and pressed it to her forehead, crying tears of a second chance she did not deserve but desperately wanted. And finally, my people, there was one more. An older man with gray at his temples and kind, tired eyes. Mr. Emeka. The only one in that room 8 years ago who had spoken up for her. The only one who had said, "We didn't ask the young woman a single question." He walked in slowly, leaning on a cane now, expecting nothing. Ngozi stood up. And in front of the whole boardroom, she walked around the table, and she took his hand in both of hers. "Sir," she said, her voice thick, "you may not remember me, but 8 years ago, when everyone else laughed at my shoes, you tried to give me a chance. You were the only one. I walked out of here broken that day, but I carried your kindness with me for 8 years. It told me that the world was not all cruel, that there were still good people in it." She smiled through her tears. "Brightstone is being reborn, and I would be honored if you would help me lead it. As a senior advisor, as the man who reminds us, every single day, to never judge a person by their shoes." Mr. Emeka, the old man, looked at the girl he had defended so long ago, now grown into the queen her mother always knew she would be, and he could not speak. He simply nodded, the same small nod he had given her at the door 8 years before. Only this time, it was not a nod of helplessness. It was a nod of pride. That evening, my people, Ngozi did not go to a fancy restaurant to celebrate. She drove to Mushin. She found a familiar roadside stand, glowing in the dusk, smelling of hot oil and frying beans. And she sat down on a low wooden bench beside her mother, in her expensive suit, and she bought a wrap of akara for 50 naira and ate it with her fingers. "How did it go, my daughter?" Mama Ngozi asked. Ngozi looked up at the Lagos sky, at the same stars that had watched her wade through the flood 8 years before. "It went well, Mama," she said softly. "They finally looked at me. And this time they couldn't look away. And so, my people, remember this. Never ever judge a person by what they wear, by their shoes, by the house they come from, or the accent on their tongue. Because the person you mock today, the person you step over, the person you laugh at when they are down, may very well be the person who decides your future tomorrow. Treat everybody, the high and the low, the rich and the poor, with kindness and respect. Not because of who they might become, but because it is the right thing to do. And carry something good inside you, the way Ngozi's father said. Because one day, when the world finally stops to look, that good thing is what will speak for you. If this story touched your heart, please tap that like button, subscribe to this channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story like this one. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, And what part of Ngozi's journey stayed with you the most? Was it the flood, the torn shoes, the laughter, or the moment she walked back through those glass doors? Drop your city, your country, and your time below. And share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that no condition is permanent. Until the next story, my people, keep your heart kind, keep your head high, and never let anybody make you feel small because of what is on your feet. Because what is in your head and your heart will always, always carry you further. Goodbye, and God bless you.